Eleanor Vance stared at the invitation, the embossed gold lettering mockingly shimmering under the dim light of her tiny apartment. You are cordially invited to the engagement gala of Mr. Julian Thorne and Miss Serafina Chen. Julian Thorne, her ex-boyfriend, the man who had publicly dumped her for Serafina, leaving her reputation in tatters and her family mortified. Her cousin, Clara, always the picture of success, would be there, undoubtedly flaunting her new diamond, while Eleanor would be left to face the pitying glances and whispered judgments. Her family, the Vances, once a pillar of their small, prestigious community, had fallen on hard times. Her father's business had suffered a series of devastating setbacks, and their once grand estate was slowly crumbling. The Thornchen engagement wasn't just a social event, it was a reunion of the elite, a chance for her family to regain some semblance of standing. Her mother had practically begged her, "Eleanor, just one night. Show them you're thriving. Bring someone impressive." She flushed. "Right. Sorry again." The humiliation of their previous encounter, combined with the secret of the $200, flared up. "So, just enjoying your day off." The sarcasm in her voice was unintentional, but it was there. "Impressive!" Eleanor scoffed, running a hand through her slightly frayed hair. Her bank account balance scoffed back. The only impressive thing she had was her student loan debt. His smile widened, a genuine, dazzling flash that transformed his serious face. "Something like that? And you still charming the socks off wealthy industrialists?" Then, a desperate idea, born from late-night internet scrolling, flickered to life. Boyfriend for hire. The ad had been tucked away on an obscure forum, promising discreet companionship for social events. She had dismissed it as a joke, but now, the absurdity felt like a lifeline. $100 for 2 hours, an additional $50 for every hour after, plus a $100 impressiveness bonus for a convincing performance. $200. It was a sum she couldn't afford, but one she felt she couldn't afford not to spend. "No," Eleanor retorted, suddenly emboldened by a surge of frustration. "I'm usually too busy trying to pay rent and not accidentally hire billionaires as my fake boyfriends for $200. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. With a trembling hand, she sent the inquiry. The response was immediate, terse, and professional. Details, date, time, location, required persona. Alexander's amusement faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "Ah, so the cat is out of the bag. You know," Eleanor typed back furiously. "Engagement gala. Julian Thorne. Needs someone. Commanding. Elegant. Someone who makes Julian regret everything. Someone who makes my family proud." She felt a flush rise to her cheeks even as she wrote it. The sheer desperation of it all was overwhelming. "Of course. I know." Eleanor's voice rose slightly. "You're the Alexander Sterling. Why on earth did you do that? Was it some kind of sick joke? An experiment? Did you just get bored of having too much money?" A picture arrived, grainy but clear enough. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, with an aura of quiet power even in the low-quality image. His eyes, though hard to discern, seemed to hold a piercing intelligence. He looked nothing like the scruffy college students or eager actors she'd imagined. He looked expensive. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't a joke, Eleanor, and I certainly wasn't bored." He looked around the quiet gallery, then lowered his voice. "Could we talk somewhere private? This is a rather public venue for this discussion. Payment up front." The message read, "Location for pickup." Eleanor hesitated, then nodded, her curiosity overriding her anger. He led her to a small, elegant cafe tucked away in a quiet courtyard nearby. Over lukewarm coffee. Alexander finally began to explain. Eleanor bit her lip, then transferred the money. She was burning her last bridge, risking everything on a man she knew nothing about. But the thought of walking into that gala alone, facing Julian Thorne's smug grin, was far worse. "The gala wasn't just a social event for me," he began, his gaze intense. "My Aunt Beatrice, as you briefly met, has been systematically attempting to wrest control of Sterling Group for years. She's cunning, and she uses social events to gather intelligence, spread disinformation, and cultivate alliances. The Thornchen engagement party was strategically important for her to solidify her position with a key investor, Mr. Davies, who was also attending. The day of the gala arrived. Eleanor paced her small living room, a cheap but elegant emerald green dress clinging to her curves. She'd spent her last savings on it, hoping it would project an image of effortless glamour. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She was nervous, not just about the event, but about the man she was about to meet. What if he was a creep? What if he was terrible at acting? Eleanor listened, rapt. The pieces were starting to fit. A sleek, black town car pulled up outside her modest apartment building. Eleanor frowned. This was unexpected. Her rental was supposed to meet her on the street, not arrive in such style. Hesitantly, she descended the worn steps. I needed to be there, to observe, to counter her moves, but without drawing undue attention to my own agenda. He continued, my public appearances are usually highly choreographed. Arriving alone would have made me an easy target for speculation. Arriving with a prearranged, high-profile partner would have been even worse, making it clear I was there for business, not pleasure. The car door opened, and a man unfolded himself from the back seat. He was even more imposing in person than in the photo. Dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit, his silver hair was impeccably styled, and his chiseled features hinted at a life of privilege. His eyes, a striking shade of stormy gray, held a cool, assessing gaze as they swept over her. So you needed a cover, Eleanor finished, the realization dawning. A distraction. And I, conveniently, provided one. Eleanor Vance. His voice was deep, resonant, and carried an undeniable authority. He nodded. Precisely. Your ad was unique, and the details of your situation were perfect. A fabricated relationship, a sympathetic backstory, and a clear motivation to create a stir. It was the ideal camouflage. Eleanor swallowed, suddenly feeling acutely aware of her cheap dress and her trembling hands. Yes, and you must be my +1. She tried to sound confident, but her voice wavered. And the $200? She asked, her voice laced with bitterness. Just pocket change for the great Alexander Sterling. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips. Alexander Sterling, he introduced himself, extending a hand. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. Your escort for the evening. The $200 was part of the anonymity, he explained. A standard transaction, no questions asked. It ensured the service was legitimate and that you weren't an asset planted by my rivals. He paused, his expression softening. And when I saw you, Eleanor, when I saw your genuine distress, your quiet resilience, and the way Julian Thorne treated you, it became more than just a cover. I found myself genuinely wanting to help you, to protect you. Eleanor blinked. Alexander Sterling. The name resonated with a faint familiarity, but she couldn't place it. He didn't look like any rental she'd ever seen, not even in movies. This man looked like he owned the entire building, not just rented himself out for $200. A cold dread began to creep in. Had she made a mistake? Was this some kind of elaborate scam? But the car was real. The suit was real. And the man radiating power before her was undeniably, terrifyingly real. Eleanor stared at him, caught off guard by his sincerity. Protect me or use me? Sterling, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Both. Initially, he admitted, his gray eyes meeting hers directly. But then, something shifted. Your spirit, your intelligence. You aren't like the people in my world. You're real. And being with you, even under false pretenses, was refreshing. A genuine connection in a world full of artifice. He nodded, a hint of impatience in his gaze. We're running late. Shall we? He gestured towards the car. He reached across the table, taking her hand gently. I apologize for the deception. Eleanor, it was born of necessity, not malice, but my feelings. The ones that grew during that evening. They were very real. The locket? It was a token of my regret for the lie, and my hope that perhaps we could have a real beginning. Eleanor, too stunned to argue, allowed him to usher her into the luxurious vehicle. As the car pulled away, she sank into the plush leather seat, her mind racing. Alexander Sterling. Why did that name feel so significant? And why, for a mere $200? Was this man pretending to be hers? The evening, she realized, was going to be far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The stage was set, and she had just walked onto it, utterly unprepared for the leading man. Eleanor pulled her hand away, still reeling. A real beginning, Alexander. You live in a different universe. My life is small. Yours is vast and complicated, full of corporate battles and power struggles. How can we possibly have a real beginning? The car purred through the city streets, a cocoon of leather and hushed silence. Eleanor risked a glance at Alexander. He sat perfectly still, his profile sharp against the passing city lights, exuding an air of contained power. He checked his watch, a gleaming minimalist design that probably cost more than her entire annual income. Because, he said, his voice quiet but firm, my world, vast as it is, has been terribly lonely. And your small world, as you call it, holds more truth and integrity than anything I've known. I don't want a fake girlfriend anymore. Eleanor, I want you. So, Eleanor began, trying to inject a casualness she didn't feel. Alexander Sterling. Is that your stage name? The truth, when it finally came, was overwhelming. It wasn't a joke or a scam. It was a desperate move by a powerful man and an accidental, impossible connection. Eleanor looked at Alexander Sterling, not as the mysterious rental, not as the untouchable CEO, but as a man who was, for reasons she couldn't yet fathom, genuinely interested in her. The $200 had bought her a lie, but it had also, inadvertently, opened the door to a truth she never thought possible. And now, she had to decide if she was brave enough to walk through it. A slow turn of his head, those stormy gray eyes fixing on her. It's my name. No elaborations, no explanations, just a statement of fact that somehow felt like a dismissal. Eleanor walked out of the cafe, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, humiliation, confusion, but also a strange, undeniable flutter of hope. Alexander Sterling, the elusive billionaire, had just laid bare his reasons, and a hint of his vulnerability. He wanted her, the girl who had literally bought him. Eleanor fidgeted. Right, well, just for the record, I'm Eleanor Vance, and I, appreciate you taking this on. It's a bit of a tricky situation. She spent the next few days in a daze, replaying every word, every glance from that evening. His explanation, while shocking, resonated with a painful truth about his world, a world she had only glimpsed. The corporate battle, Aunt Beatrice's machinations, the need for a diversion, it all made a terrible kind of sense. But did it justify the deception? I was briefed, he said simply. Ex-boyfriend, family reputation, need to appear thriving, the usual. His tone was devoid of judgment, almost clinical. Just as she was beginning to process the revelation, a new storm brewed. Her father called, his voice strained. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. That investment we were hoping for, the one that would save the business, it's fallen through. And worse, our main competitor, Thorne Industries, just announced a major new venture. They're expanding into our territory, aggressively. I don't know how we're going to survive this. I enjoy art, he said simply, picking up the fallen piece. Though I prefer to appreciate it without being involved in minor collisions. Eleanor's blood ran cold. Thorne Industries, Julian Thorne's family business. This wasn't just a coincidence. Julian's smugness at the gala, his subtle jabs, now made chilling sense. He knew something. He was part of something. The usual. Eleanor scoffed. For $200. I doubt this is the usual for you. Later that day, Alexander called. His voice was urgent. Eleanor, we need to talk. Immediately. Something big is happening with Thorne Industries. They just acquired a key patent that could cripple a major division of Sterling Group. And I suspect they had inside information. A corner of his mouth twitched, a fleeting hint of amusement. You'd be surprised what people pay for a convincing performance. Eleanor's grip tightened on the phone. My father just told me. Thorne Industries is moving aggressively into our market. It's like they know our every move. Eleanor felt a fresh wave of unease. He was too good, too composed, too real. They pulled up to the venue, a magnificent or sprawling estate lit up like a beacon. Chandeliers blazed through panoramic windows, and a fleet of luxury cars lined the driveway. A red carpet, usually reserved for Hollywood premieres, stretched to the grand entrance, a beat of silence. Eleanor, Alexander said, his voice grim. This is bigger than just your family's business. Julian Thorne's father, Richard Thorne, has been quietly forming an alliance with my Aunt Beatrice. They share a common enemy, me. And now, it seems, you and your family are caught in the crossfire as collateral damage. The Sterling Gala. Eleanor gasped, a sickening realization dawning on her. This is the Sterling family estate. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. Julian's public humiliation of her, designed to undermine her family's standing, had been a prelude. Her appearance with Alexander at the gala, however accidental, had thrown a wrench into their plans, alerting them to a possible connection. Now, they were striking back, targeting not just Alexander, but anyone loosely associated with him. Alexander, already opening his door, paused. He turned, a slight frown creasing his brow. Of course. Did you not check the invitation thoroughly? What do we do? Eleanor asked, her voice trembling. Eleanor felt a cold wave wash over her. The Sterling family, the titans of industry, the quiet billionaires whose name was synonymous with power and wealth, and Alexander Sterling was their name. Her mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Alexander Sterling, CEO, billionaire. She must have hired the Alexander Sterling. The absurdity, the sheer impossibility of it, almost made her laugh. If she wasn't on the verge of fainting, "We fight back," Alexander said, his tone resolute. "But we can't do it separately. They're too powerful, too connected. I need your help." Eleanor, "No, I just saw the address," she stammered, feeling lightheaded. "I didn't realize." "Oh my God," Eleanor scoffed. "My help, I'm a graphic designer. Alexander, I can barely manage my own life, let alone take on corporate titans and scheming ants." He offered her his arm, his expression unreadable. "It's a party. Eleanor, compose yourself. Remember why you're here." "You have something they don't expect," he countered. "They see you as weak, inconsequential, a mere distraction. But you have a unique perspective, an outsider's view. You understand people, motivations, how to tell a story, and you have access to information through your family's plight. We can use that. We can use us." Eleanor took his arm, her hand trembling. The sheer weight of his presence, the unspoken power he exuded, was overwhelming. As they walked the red carpet, a flurry of photographers' flashes erupted. Eleanor instinctively flinched, but Alexander remained unfazed, his grip on her arm steady. He simply inclined his head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of their presence. "Us," Eleanor echoed, confused. Inside, the ballroom was a kaleidoscope of shimmering gowns, tailored suits, and a symphony of polite chatter. Eleanor felt 1,000 eyes on them, drawn not to her emerald dress, but to the man beside her. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that Alexander Sterling? With someone? Who is she?" "Yes, us," he reiterated. "I propose we continue the charade. But this time, it won't be for $200 and a flimsy excuse. It will be a real alliance. We play the part of a couple, a genuine one, to lull them into a false sense of security. While they focus on our romance, we uncover their schemes. I need a partner, Eleanor, a genuine one, someone I can trust, someone who sees beyond the Sterling name." Eleanor clutched his arm tighter, her palms sweating. This wasn't just a fake date. This was a public debut with one of the most eligible and private bachelors in the country. She caught sight of Julian Thorne, her ex, across the room, his eyes widening in disbelief as he recognized her, and then narrowed suspiciously as he registered Alexander. Victory, bitter and terrifying, surged through her. Eleanor was speechless. Continue the deception. With the man who had unknowingly used her, but now offered a partnership. It was insane, but the thought of her family's business crumbling, of Julian Thorne getting away with it, spurred a new kind of courage in her. Alexander led her through the throng with a practiced ease, greeting people with polite nods and brief, charming smiles. He introduced her simply as Eleanor, offering no surname or further details. Yet, his mere presence was enough to command respect. He answered questions about himself evasively, always turning the conversation back to the gala or the other person. Eleanor, trying to mimic his cool demeanor, just smiled vaguely and nodded. "What's in it for me?" she asked, her voice hardening. "Beyond the thrill of corporate espionage, of course." "Eleanor, darling, you made it." Clara, her cousin, swooped in, a diamond glittering on her finger. Her smile was saccharine, but her eyes were already assessing Alexander. And who is this handsome gentleman? Beyond the satisfaction of seeing justice served and their downfall, Alexander said, a hint of a smile in his voice. I will ensure your family's business is not only saved, but flourishes. I have resources, influence. I can help them navigate this. And when this is over, Eleanor, when all the lies are stripped away and we've won, then we can see if that genuine connection we both felt was just a charade or the start of something truly real. Before Eleanor could stumble through an explanation, Alexander squeezed her hand reassuringly. Alexander Sterling, a pleasure to finally meet you. Clara, Eleanor has told me so much about you. His voice was smooth as silk, and Eleanor nearly choked. She had told him nothing about Clara, let alone anything positive. The proposition hung in the air, a dangerous, tempting offer. It meant stepping into a world she didn't belong in, risking exposure, and potentially losing her heart to a man who lived a life she could barely comprehend. But it also meant fighting for her family, for justice, and for a chance at a life she never dreamed possible. Clara's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise and envy crossing her face. Sterling. The Alexander. Sterling. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Eleanor, you never said you were seeing him. Eleanor thought of her father's tired eyes, of Julian's condescending smirk, of Beatrice's icy disdain. She thought of the locket, a silent promise of connection. And she thought of Alexander, the unexpected CEO who saw something in her no one else had. Alexander merely offered a knowing smile, leaving Clara to draw her own conclusions. Eleanor felt a mix of exhilaration and terror. This was working beyond her wildest dreams. But the stakes were skyrocketing. How long could she maintain this charade? And what would happen when the truth inevitably came crashing down? The weight of the secret felt like a physical burden. Okay, Alexander, she said, her voice firm. I'm in. But this isn't just a business deal. This is a partnership. And if you betray me again, in any way, I swear I'll make sure the world knows you rented a girlfriend for $200. She saw Julian Thorne making his way towards them, a determined, slightly angry look on his face. Eleanor braced herself. This was the moment of reckoning. But she also felt a strange confidence. Standing beside Alexander Sterling, for now, he was hers, a silent, powerful shield against the world. And for $200, it was proving to be the most expensive and most terrifying investment of her life. A deep, warm chuckle resonated through the phone. Fair enough, Eleanor. Welcome to the game. I promise you, this time there will be no more lies between us. Julian Thorne approached, a forced smile on his face, though his eyes burned with suspicion. Serafina, clinging to his arm, looked equally bewildered. Eleanor, Julian began, his voice dripping with feigned casualness. Long time no see. And who is your friend? His gaze lingered on Alexander, assessing. The line clicked dead, leaving Eleanor alone in her quiet apartment, the weight of her decision settling over her. She was no longer just the girl who had rented a boyfriend. She was now an unwitting player in a high-stakes corporate drama, with a real CEO by her side, fighting for a future she couldn't yet see. The battle had just begun. Alexander stepped slightly forward, subtly placing himself between Eleanor and Julian. Alexander Sterling, he stated, his tone firm, leaving no room for question. He didn't offer his hand. Eleanor's partner. The word partner resonated with a possessive undertone that made Eleanor's stomach flutter. The next few weeks were a blur of intense strategy sessions, clandestine meetings, and public appearances that were anything but casual. Eleanor quickly discovered that Alexander Sterling, the man who had initially charmed her with his effortless demeanor, was a ruthless strategist in the boardroom. He moved with precision, his mind a steel trap of facts, figures, and foresight. Julian's eyes narrowed. Sterling, as in the Sterling Group. He tried to mask his shock, but his jaw clenched. Their relationship became public knowledge. The press, initially skeptical, quickly devoured the story of the reclusive CEO falling for an unknown artist. Eleanor, under Alexander's guidance, crafted a believable backstory for their whirlwind romance, one that conveniently avoided any mention of a $200 transaction. She learned to navigate society events with newfound grace, her previous discomfort replaced by a steely resolve. One and the same, Alexander affirmed, his voice coolly polite. Their mission was twofold: uncover the extent of the Thorne-Beatrice alliance and find irrefutable proof of their illicit activities, specifically the patent theft and market manipulation that threatened both the Vance family business and a critical Sterling Group project. Serafina, usually composed, let out a tiny gasp. "Oh, Mr. Sterling. It's an honor. I'm Serafina Chen." Eleanor's role was crucial. While Alexander handled the corporate heavy lifting, she became his eyes and ears in social circles. Her artistic background gave her a natural cover for asking seemingly innocuous questions, observing body language, and gathering snippets of conversation. She used her graphic design skills to visualize complex data Alexander provided, creating compelling presentations that highlighted the Thorne-Beatrice scheme. Alexander gave her a brief nod, his attention already shifting back to Julian. "I believe Eleanor was just telling me about your recent engagement. Congratulations." His tone was neutral, but his eyes held a subtle challenge that unnerved Julian. Julian, clearly flustered, tried to regain control. "Yes. Well, it was a long time coming. Eleanor and I, we just weren't compatible. In the end." "Right. Eleanor." He shot her a condescending look, hoping to remind her of her past humiliation. Eleanor, caught off guard, stumbled for words. But before she could respond, Alexander's hand subtly found the small of her back, a comforting, yet possessive touch. "Compatibility, Mr. Thorne," Alexander interjected smoothly, "is often a matter of perspective. Some find a certain quiet strength more appealing than overt flashiness." His gaze flickered meaningfully between Eleanor and Serafina, a subtle dig that was lost on no one. "And my father's business?" Eleanor asked, her jaw tight. Julian flushed, visibly irritated. "I see. Well, Eleanor seems to have done quite well for herself then. Though I must say, she always struck me as more of the artistic type, not exactly the corporate world." He smirked, implying she was out of her depth. "A convenient casualty," Alexander replied, his voice grim. "Your father's company has been a quiet leader in certain components essential to that sector. By crippling him, they weaken a potential supplier to Sterling and eliminate a competitor to Thorne who has been trying to develop similar components." Alexander chuckled softly, a low, captivating sound. "Eleanor possesses a keen intellect and a remarkable grasp of detail, qualities that are highly valued in any world. Her unique perspective is one of her many charms." He looked at Eleanor, a genuine warmth in his eyes that made her heart race. He was putting on a show, but his words felt surprisingly sincere. Their working relationship deepened, evolving into something far more profound. Long nights poring over documents turned into shared meals, then into laughter and surprisingly intimate conversations. Eleanor discovered layers to Alexander she never imagined. Beneath the impenetrable CEO facade was a man burdened by immense responsibility. A man who yearned for genuine connection and who, despite his immense wealth, faced his own battles against betrayal and loneliness. He spoke of his childhood, of the pressures of inheriting an empire, of the constant scrutiny and the pervasive loneliness of his position. Eleanor, emboldened by his unwavering support, met Julian's gaze. "Indeed, Julian, some things are simply a matter of finding the right fit, aren't they?" Her voice was steady, confident. Julian's face darkened. Realizing he had lost this round, she, in turn, opened up about her dreams, her fears, the struggles of her family. Alexander listened, truly listened, offering not just solutions, but empathy. The initial spark, born from a bizarre deception, now ignited into a fierce, protective love. He found solace in her authenticity, and she, in his unwavering strength and surprising tenderness. They soon excused themselves, leaving Julian and Serafina sputtering. Alexander led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom, where a few older, distinguished guests greeted him with deference. Eleanor listened, stunned, as Alexander discussed complex business deals, global markets, and philanthropic ventures, all with an effortless grace. He wasn't just playing a CEO, he was a CEO. One critical piece of the puzzle remained elusive, irrefutable proof that Beatrice and Thorne were colluding to steal the patent and manipulate the market. All their evidence was circumstantial. During a lull in conversation, Eleanor leaned closer to him. "You're really good at this," she whispered. a hint of awe in her voice. Too good. Why are you doing this? We need something undeniable, Alexander stressed. A recording, an email, a signed document. Something that proves intent and direct involvement. He looked down at her, a cryptic smile playing on his lips. Perhaps I enjoy a challenge, or perhaps I find your predicament intriguing. He didn't elaborate. Eleanor had an idea. Julian, she said, he's arrogant and he loves to gloat. What if we could provoke him? As the evening wore on, Eleanor noticed something else. Alexander seemed to be subtly observing the other guests. His eyes, though often focused on her, would occasionally sweep the room, lingering on certain individuals. An older man with shrewd eyes, a young woman who seemed too eager to please, a man constantly on his phone. He wasn't just there to be her escort. He had his own agenda. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Provoke him how? At one point, a tall, elegant woman with sharp features approached Alexander. Alexander, darling, I barely recognized you with company. Her gaze was dismissive as it swept over Eleanor. Still playing games. I see. By making him think he's won, Eleanor explained. By making him think you're distracted, weak, and that I'm just a silly girl who knows nothing. He won't be able to resist revealing his hand. Alexander's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Aunt Beatrice, always a pleasure. This is Eleanor Vance. His tone was polite, but cold. Eleanor, this is my Aunt Beatrice. They decided on a risky plan, a high-profile charity auction, attended by all the key players, including Beatrice, Richard Thorne, and Julian. Alexander would appear distracted, overly affectionate with Eleanor, making it seem like he was neglecting his corporate duties for their blossoming romance. Eleanor, meanwhile, would deliberately overhear a planted, false piece of information about Sterling Group's financial vulnerability, designed to tempt Julian into a careless boast. Beatrice offered a tight-lipped smile. Lovely to meet you, Eleanor. Just be careful, dear. Alexander has a habit of collecting fascinating little projects. Her words were laced with venom, a thinly veiled warning. The night of the auction arrived. Eleanor, in a stunning gown Alexander had insisted she wear, played her part perfectly. She laughed a little too loudly at Alexander's jokes, clung to his arm a little too possessively, and occasionally let her gaze wander as if lost in a lover's daze. Alexander, for his part, played the lovesick CEO, his attention constantly drawn to her, making a few intentionally careless remarks about recent, minor financial setbacks. Eleanor felt a prick of indignation. She wasn't a project. She was a person. But before she could retort, Alexander's arm tightened around her waist. Eleanor, unlike some, understands the difference between genuine connection and superficial gain, a rare quality. Indeed. His voice was low, dangerous. Beatrice's smile faltered, and she quickly retreated. Julian, seeing their apparent distraction, approached them with a smug smile. Enjoying the show, Alexander. Don't let your personal life distract you from what's really happening in the market. His gaze flickered to Eleanor. Dismissive. Eleanor looked up at him, surprised. Thank you, she said softly. Alexander sighed dramatically. Indeed, Julian. Eleanor is quite the distraction. Keeps me on my toes. He squeezed Eleanor's hand, a silent signal. He merely nodded, his gaze still fixed on Beatrice's retreating back. Some members of my family can be challenging. Eleanor, feigning a tipsy giggle, excused herself to the ladies' room, but not before accidentally letting a snippet of a fabricated, dire financial report slip to a strategically placed business associate who was known to gossip directly to Julian. The night ended with Alexander escorting her back to her apartment. The town car was still waiting. As she stood on her doorstep, the cool night air a stark contrast to the opulent warmth of the gala, she felt a strange mixture of relief and regret. Relief that the charade was over, regret that the magic of being with Alexander, even if it was a lie, was gone. Later, as the auction heated up, Julian cornered Eleanor by the champagne bar, his eyes gleaming with a malicious triumph. You know, Eleanor, he slurred, slightly emboldened by alcohol. It's almost amusing. You go from a pathetic little artist to Alexander Sterling's arm candy. But a pretty face won't save him. His empire is crumbling. That new energy division. We've got it locked up. That patent was ours for the taking. Beatrice made sure of it. Poor Alex. too busy playing Romeo to notice the knife in his back. "Thank you. Alexander," she said, genuinely, "you were more than I could have asked for." Eleanor's heart hammered, but she kept her face carefully blank, feigning confusion. "What patent? What are you talking about, Julian?" He offered her a small, enigmatic smile. "Pleasure doing business with you, Eleanor Vance." He paused, his gaze lingering on her face. "Though I suspect this may not be our last encounter." Julian chuckled, reaching for another glass of champagne. "Oh, you wouldn't understand, dear. It's complex corporate stuff. But let's just say, the Thorns and the Sterlings have a new, unbreakable alliance. One that leaves Alexander out in the cold." He held up his phone, showing her a secured messaging app with messages that were clearly between him, his father, and Aunt Beatrice, discussing the patent acquisition and market strategy. "Proof, darling, proof." And with that, he turned and got back into the waiting car, leaving Eleanor standing alone on her doorstep, the $200 she had paid feeling like the cheapest, most expensive lie she had ever bought. She touched the spot where his hand had rested on her back, the phantom warmth a lingering reminder of the man who was so much more than a rental. Eleanor's eyes scanned the screen, memorizing keywords, dates, names. The messages were damning. This was it, the irrefutable evidence. "Wow, Julian," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "That's quite a secret." The next morning, Eleanor woke to an unfamiliar sense of emptiness. The high of the gala, the vindication against Julian, the strange, thrilling connection with Alexander all felt like a fading dream. Now, all that remained was the nagging question: who was Alexander Sterling, and why had he done it? "And now it's our little secret, isn't it?" He smirked, raising his glass. "To the victor, go the spoils." She pulled out her laptop and began to search, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Alexander Sterling, CEO. The results flooded her screen, overwhelming her with information. Forbes articles, Wall Street Journal profiles, images of him shaking hands with dignitaries, cutting ribbons at grand openings. He was the head of Sterling Group, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with interests in tech, finance, and real estate. His net worth was estimated in the tens of billions. He was notoriously private, rarely appearing in public with a date. Just then, Alexander appeared, his arms sliding around Eleanor's waist. His eyes, usually warm and loving when they were alone, now held a cold, hard glint as they met Julian's. "To the spoils, indeed. Julian," he said, his voice deceptively soft, "but only to those who have truly earned them." Eleanor stared at the screen, a cold pit forming in her stomach. A real CEO, not just any CEO, but the Alexander Sterling. The absurdity of it all hit her like a tidal wave. She had paid him $200 to be her fake boyfriend. The humiliation was unbearable. What was she, a struggling artist with a mountain of debt? To him, a joke, a momentary amusement. Julian, caught off guard, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Eleanor simply smiled, a secret triumph in her eyes. The trap was sprung. The evidence was theirs. Now, it was time for the final act. She tried to find any mention of a rental boyfriend service or any indication that he might engage in such bizarre activities. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was as if that part of his life simply didn't exist. Which, of course, it wouldn't. He was a billionaire. Why would he ever do something like that? The aftermath of the charity auction was swift and brutal. The evidence Eleanor had skillfully extracted from Julian Thorne, combined with Alexander's meticulously gathered financial data and internal communications, painted a damning picture. They had everything needed to expose the illicit alliance between Richard Thorne and Alexander's Aunt Beatrice. A theory began to form, chilling her to the bone. What if he wasn't there for the money, or for a challenge? What if he was there for something else entirely? His subtle observations at the gala, his cold interaction with his Aunt Beatrice, it all pointed to something deeper. Was he investigating someone? Was she part of his investigation? The thought made her skin crawl. The final confrontation occurred not in a shadowy alley, but in the polished, unforgiving arena of the Sterling Group boardroom. Alexander had called for an emergency board meeting, citing irregularities and potential malfeasance that threatened the company's integrity and future. Beatrice and Richard Thorne are targeting the new energy sector, Alexander explained one evening. leaning over a holographic projection in his penthouse office. They're trying to corner the market before Sterling Group can fully launch our sustainable energy initiative. That patent Thorne acquired, it's the linchpin. Beatrice sat across from Alexander, her face a mask of calculated defiance, though a tremor in her hands betrayed her unease. Richard Thorne, Julian's father, attended remotely, his grim face projected onto a large screen. Julian, looking terrified and out of his depth, was also present, attempting to appear nonchalant. Eleanor sat by Alexander's side, her presence a silent statement of their unity. She called her best friend Chloe, an aspiring journalist with a nose for gossip. "Chloe, you're not going to believe what happened last night," Alexander began, his voice calm, yet resonating with authority. He presented the evidence: financial transactions, leaked emails, records of clandestine meetings. Each piece of information was a hammer blow, dismantling Beatrice and Thorne's carefully constructed scheme. He laid out how they had conspired to acquire the critical energy patent, not through legitimate means, but through insider trading and sabotage, with the aim of bankrupting the Vance family business and crippling Sterling Group's new sustainable energy division. Chloe listened, her initial skepticism turning into gasps of disbelief. "You're telling me you hired the Alexander Sterling, the tech mogul, for $200? Eleanor, are you insane?" Beatrice, ever the performer, tried to deflect. "This is slander. Alexander Wild accusations designed to undermine my rightful place on this board. I didn't know it was him, I swear," Eleanor cried, burying her face in her hands. "He just showed up in that car, and he said his name was Alexander Sterling, and I just went with it. I thought he was, like, an actor who happened to be named Sterling." Richard Thorne's voice boomed from the screen. "Fabrications. My company has operated with the utmost integrity." Chloe, ever the pragmatist, was already thinking, "This is huge, Eleanor. Why would he do it? No one that rich just plays a fake boyfriend for pocket change." "Integrity." Alexander scoffed, a rare display of raw emotion. "You call it integrity when you prey on smaller businesses, when you manipulate markets for personal gain, when you betray your own family." He then played an audio recording, a muffled but clear conversation between Beatrice and Richard, discussing the details of their patent theft and their plan to leverage Julian to secure sensitive information about the Vance family's financials. "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Eleanor wailed. "He was so mysterious about it. He said he was briefed. What if he was there for his own reasons? And I just stumbled into something." The silence in the room was deafening. Beatrice's face paled. Richard Thorne's image on the screen flickered, his jaw slack. "He has enemies," Chloe mused, clicking away on her keyboard. "Lots of them. The Sterling Group is always in the news: hostile takeovers, corporate espionage, family feuds. Wait, there's a rumor. His Aunt Beatrice, a board member, has been trying to undermine him for years. There's talk of a power struggle within the company." Then, Alexander turned to Julian. "And you, Julian, you were so eager to boast. Weren't you so proud of your unbreakable alliance?" He then played the recording Eleanor had discreetly made on her phone during the auction. Julian's drunken confession, explicitly detailing his family's involvement and Beatrice's role. Eleanor's mind flashed back to Beatrice's icy demeanor and Alexander's protective stance. "His aunt was at the party," she said, her voice hushed. "She was incredibly hostile towards me." And Alexander shut her down immediately. "He said she was challenging," Julian gasped, his eyes wide with fear. That's not what I said," she twisted my words. He pointed a trembling finger at Eleanor. "Interesting," Chloe said, a journalist's gleam in her eye. "Maybe he was there to observe her, or other key players. And you, my friend, became a very convenient, very convincing cover." Eleanor met his gaze, no longer intimidated. "I twisted nothing, Julian. You were simply too eager to revel in your perceived victory to notice the truth." The realization hit Eleanor hard. She had been a pawn, a well-dressed, emerald-clad pawn in a billionaire's chess game. The thought was sickening. She had wanted to feel empowered, to show Julian she was thriving. But instead, she had become an unwitting participant in a far more dangerous game. The evidence was irrefutable. The board members, initially hesitant, now looked at Beatrice with contempt. They had known of her ambition, but not the depths of her treachery. Days turned into a week. Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being tangled in something far beyond her comprehension. She kept expecting a call, a message, anything from Alexander, demanding her silence or thanking her for her unwitting assistance. But nothing came. Within hours, the board voted unanimously to remove Beatrice from her position and initiate legal proceedings against her and Thorne Industries. The news swept through the corporate world like wildfire. Richard Thorne's reputation was in ruins, and Julian's budding career was over before it began. Justice, cold and swift, was being served. Her $200 had vanished from her account. The transaction was a clean exchange. Leaving no trace of the bizarre circumstances, it was as if the night had never happened, except for the lingering unease and the memory of Alexander's piercing gray eyes. For Eleanor's family, the relief was immediate and profound. With Alexander's intervention, the Vance family business received crucial investment and protection, allowing them not only to recover, but to thrive. Now, as a key supplier for Sterling Group's sustainable energy projects, her father, his eyes no longer burdened by worry, hugged her tightly. "You saved us, Eleanor," he whispered, tears in his eyes. One afternoon, a large, unmarked envelope arrived at her door. Inside, there was no letter, no explanation, just a single, elegant black velvet box. Eleanor opened it, her breath catching in her throat. In the quiet aftermath, Alexander and Eleanor found themselves on the rooftop of his penthouse, overlooking the glittering cityscape. The tension of the past weeks had dissipated, replaced by a profound sense of peace and a deeper, unspoken understanding. Nestled within, glimmering against the dark velvet, was a silver locket. It was intricately carved, a delicate rosebud design adorning its surface. It was beautiful, far too expensive for her. But what struck her most was the small, almost invisible engraving on the back, A.S. "It's over," Eleanor said, leaning against him, her head on his shoulder. "Alexander Sterling." "It is," Alexander confirmed, his arm tightening around her. "And we won. Together." Her hands trembled as she clutched the locket. It wasn't a thank you. It wasn't an apology. It was a silent, unsettling reminder. A message that he hadn't forgotten her. And with it came a chilling premonition. Her world, once so small and predictable, was about to collide with his in a way she never could have foreseen. The $200 had not just bought her a fake boyfriend, it had bought her an entry ticket into a world of secrets, power, and unexpected danger. "So," she mused, looking up at him, "what happens now, Mr. Sterling? Do I go back to being the unknown artist, and you go back to being the reclusive CEO?" The silver locket felt heavy in Eleanor's palm, a tangible link to the bewildering night at the Sterling Gala. The initials burned into her mind. Was it a gift? A warning? A promise of future entanglement? She felt like a character in a suspense novel, unwittingly drawn into a plot she didn't understand. He chuckled softly, a warmth spreading through her. "Not a chance. Eleanor Vance. The world knows about us now. About us." He turned her to face him, his stormy gray eyes full of affection and a newfound openness. "I told you, the $200 was part of the anonymity, but my feelings, they were real, and they still are, more real than ever." Days blurred into a week, then two. The locket remained on her dresser, a silent, beautiful enigma. Eleanor found herself checking the news, specifically for anything related to Alexander Sterling or the Sterling Group. The financial press was abuzz with rumors of a major corporate restructuring and whispers of a looming battle for control within the Sterling board. Aunt Beatrice's name surfaced repeatedly, often associated with dissenting opinions and strategic maneuvers against Alexander. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, familiar velvet box. It was the same one the locket had come in. He opened it, revealing not the locket, but a diamond ring, sparkling under the moonlight. One rainy Tuesday, Eleanor was at the local art gallery, admiring a new exhibit. She was a budding graphic designer, and her passion was creating visually stunning narratives. The quiet atmosphere was a welcome balm to her anxious mind. Lost in thought, she bumped into someone, sending a small piece of artwork tumbling from their hands. "Eleanor," he began, his voice surprisingly nervous, "I hired you for a lie, but you brought truth into my life. You showed me what genuine connection feels like, what it means to fight for what's right, and how to find peace amidst chaos. You are the most authentic, brilliant, and resilient woman I've ever met. He got down on one knee, something Eleanor never thought she'd see a man like him do. Eleanor Vance, will you do me the honor of making our real beginning a lifetime? Oh, I'm so sorry, Eleanor exclaimed, bending down to retrieve it. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. This wasn't a rented moment or a strategic alliance. This was real. This was love. This was her extraordinary, impossible future. No harm done, a familiar voice replied. Yes, Alexander, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times. Yes. Eleanor froze. Her head snapped up. Alexander Sterling stood before her. Not in a tailored suit, but in a casual cashmere sweater and dark jeans, looking impossibly relaxed and undeniably captivating. Her heart hammered against her ribs. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. It sparkled, a beacon of their unlikely journey, a testament to how a desperate $200 deal could accidentally lead to an empire, justice, and a love that was richer than any CEO's fortune. Eleanor Vance, the girl who rented a boyfriend, had found her real CEO, and with him, a life filled with honesty, adventure, and unwavering love. He offered her a small, knowing smile. Eleanor, what a surprise! His stormy gray eyes twinkled with a hint of amusement, as if he'd expected to run into her. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story of unexpected twists, dramatic revelations, and a love forged in the fires of corporate intrigue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us bring more captivating tales to life. Stay with us for the next one, and while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. Eleanor's composure vanished. Alexander, what are you... Here? Her voice was a squeak,